I'd like to speak to you about what Jesuits refer to as the Examen of St. Ignatius of Loyola, or more briefly known as the Ignatian Examen. But I guess before we do so, in order to understand really what the Ignatian Examen is all about, let me ask you a question. Do you usually ask yourself what happened to me during the day before you go to sleep? Because if you do, then you are doing, in one way or another, what Ignatius refers to as the examen. I say in one way or another because it is not just going through the events of your life during the day alone. Because in the Ignatian examen, you look at the events of your life during the day, not alone, but with God. And that is why the Ignatian examen is really a prayer. What are the elements of the Ignatian examen? The first element is presence, followed by thanksgiving, then the review of the day, followed by asking for forgiveness, and finally, asking for the grace for the following day. Now, let's begin with the first element, presence. Whose presence? As I said a while ago, it is prayer. And that is why the first element is about the presence of God. We try to compose ourselves and try to be aware that God is with us. It can help us in this first element to ask for God's Spirit, because God is always present to us through His Spirit. And so that is the first element of the Ignatian examen. Presence, God's presence, asking for the grace to feel God's presence as we begin the examen. The second element after presence is thanksgiving. It's basically asking ourselves, what are the blessings that I have received during the day? Because whether you are aware of it or not, God gives us blessings. And it's just a matter of looking at the events of the day, looking at the people we met during the day, listening to their words, and to see that God was gifting us with certain things that we need to survive the day. And so that's the basic question we ask. What are the things that I should be thankful for? What are the blessings that I have received from God? That's the second element, thanksgiving. The third element is the review proper. This time, in this third element, we now, with God, look at all the events that happened to us during the day. It's just a matter of asking, what are those significant moments of my day that I think God is moving me towards? What are those significant emotions that I felt during the day? Perhaps it's joy, perhaps it's sadness. What is God telling me through those emotions? What is God telling me through the people that I dealt with during the day? It's basically a review of the day, as I've said a while ago. The fourth element after reviewing your day is asking for forgiveness. Because for sure, as you review your day, as you look at the different moments of your day, there were times when you realized that you were not very loving. You were not, for example, understanding towards your neighbor. Perhaps you were not charitable. These are moments when we ask for forgiveness. These are moments when we feel that God is wanting us to be the very child that He wants us to be. And this is why we ask for forgiveness from a Father who is very understanding, who is very loving, and who is very merciful. The final element is the asking for the grace for the following day. After looking or reviewing our day and asking for forgiveness for the events for the day, we ask for the grace to avoid those things that we should have avoided during the day that we were reviewing. We ask for the grace to be better. We ask for the grace to do more for God, to be more loving, to be more generous towards our neighbor. And so these are the 5 elements of the Ignatian examen: presence, thanksgiving, review of the day, asking for forgiveness, and asking for tomorrow's grace. I hope you will find the time to do the Ignatian examen A wise man once said, "An unexamined life is not worth living." We examine our lives not alone, but with God, all for His greater glory. Thank you.